So today we're going to talk about um, connection and how we can, as early educators, the power we have in connection. My background, many of you know, I am a behaviorist, but I also am a certified attachment therapist, and I have been a foster mom, as I just revealed a few minutes ago. So I know firsthand what it's like to have a child who has an insecure attachment. And so we'll talk a little bit about a secure attachment and an insecure attachment and how that plays out. So the importance of connection. Being in ECLC is the first time for many children to be away from their caregivers.
Colleen, I'm sorry to interrupt. You don't have the screen shared.
You don't? Okay.
No.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry about that. I must maybe happened when I pressed record. Okay, let's try that again. Okay. Can you see it? Thank you for letting me know, Jennifer. I wasn't seeing you all, and I'm like, where are they? Okay, so the importance of connection, right? We talked about this a little bit with Nina Etzel, and connection over versus correction. So we'll go into that today, but I wanted to start with the foundation and the importance of connection. Um, Being in an ECLC is the first time for many children to be away from their caregivers. So our most important goal is making children feel safe and building a bond of trust with them. So some children are coming in as early as infancy, right? So it's really, we are their secondary caregiver. The research shows that forming safe and secure attachments with primary caregivers and alternative caregivers, that would be us, has a significant impact on a child's life. These safe and secure attachments have long-term effects that impact a child's life into their adult years. Social and emotional development. Research has shown that early attachments shape social and emotional development. Early attachments also affect a child's ability to self-regulate. And the research also has shown that children with insecure attachments have higher levels of maladaptive behavior than children who have a history of secure attachment bonds. Forming secure attachment relationships with early childhood providers has a powerful influence over a child's social and emotional development and growth during their time with us and actually well into their adult lives. So I just want to take a moment and think about how powerful of an impact we have as early childhood providers in a child's life, not only now while they're with us, but well into their future. Secure attachment versus insecure attachment. We shouldn't expect that a child has secure attachment coming in. Many times, you might think that, well, if all the other children could do something, why do I have to change how I am because of another child? And they might not have a disability, right? Sometimes this is an insecure attachment playing out. Um, so we can also recognize that there may be adverse impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on attachment bonds. And for you who've been in early childhood education, like myself, for a very long time, you can see how things have changed. And the research has showed that because parents have been stressed during the COVID-19 pandemic, this has affected attachment bonds and created more insecure attachment. Also, the early introduction and overuse of technology for young learners can also impact attachment to caregivers as well. So, parental distraction by technology can compromise secure attachment and child development. And the research does support that. And, we're seeing children on iPads as young as 2 years old. And so this does have an impact on the attachment bonds, which will in turn affect social and emotional development. So, what can we do? Well, first of all, we can be compassionate, right? We can't control all these factors, but we can show up with compassion. We can create an environment that is predictable with consistent care, where children's needs are met and are nurtured and respected and attended to. And the research shows by having that consistent care, children can form secure attachments, to alternative caregivers. We can focus on relationship building, which will foster trust and which will positively impact a child's social and emotional development. So, navigating challenging behavior. This goes back to Nina Essel when she came to talk to us in the fall. I just want to review that. And she said, something that I think is really important, which is kids do well if they want to. Kids do well if they can. So a lot of times people think that they don't want to. They don't want to do it. But start to think about like they can't. They don't have that capacity at the time. So there's things that reasons why they may not be able to meet the needs of what our expectations are. They might not have language to communicate their needs, especially in ECLC. And the waiting skills or patience, right? We all seen that. They might not understand instruction. We want to be simple in our direction and language. And when we say things too complicated, they might just miss half the direction. So we want to be simple. And young children are still learning how to regulate and identify their emotions. They might not trust you yet if you have a new student, especially if they're coming in with the insecure attachment. They just might not trust you yet. Or they might not feel secure and confident navigating this new environment. So what is behavior? We're going to be talking more about behavior in our next training later this morning. But again, behavior is a form of communication. So when a child is engaging in challenging behavior, the most important thing is to not take it personally. There's a book called The Four Agreements, great book if you haven't read it, but it's really not about us, right? And I know as an early childhood provider, you might have a lot going on in your classroom, a lot of needs. But when, just to keep centered that this isn't about us and not taking it personally. And from this stance, we can really approach a child's behavior with more compassion and more empathy. And what do challenging behaviors show us? They're really showing us where deficits are, and they give us direction into what skills we need to teach. Relationship building. We know that establishing trust and secure relationships with young children as alternative caregivers has a powerful impact on their social and emotional development. That's so powerful that that gives us, like, when we take responsibility for that relationship, we can really have an impact that's long lasting. um, we know that when a strong, safe, and secure relationship is developed, we can have more of an impact navigating those challenging moments. So they're going to have challenging moments, but if they trust you and you have that relationship, you're going to get through it a lot quicker if you have a good, strong connection, right? And we know this with our own children. Um, it will make the process of emotional regulation much easier. And if a child has that secure connection with us, and we can help them co-regulate. Creating supportive environments. This is the first time away from the primary caregivers. And how we connect with them is really important in making them feel supported and cared for. So we want to be really mindful in how we're connecting. We want to connect in a way that fosters a feeling of safety and trust and not being overly focused on correcting. Because if every time we are connecting to them, we're just giving corrective feedback, that doesn't really feel good, right? So we want to really be mindful of what our time is like when we are in connection. Are we connecting and building security, or are we just giving feedback all the time, especially to the more challenging children, right? With more challenging behavior. One of the YMCA's core values is caring. So remember to ask, I just always say, remember to ask yourself, like, how can I be more caring in this moment, as challenging as it is? Um, and, just having that compassion that these are young children, a lot, and it's a long time away from their caregivers, right? Especially some of the really young ones, like 2 years old, 1 years old, uh, even younger, I know in the infants. Uh, but they're away from their primary caregivers for a really long time. And that could be hard. So, what can we do to navigate challenging behavior? We we want to respond in a way that fosters connection and support. And for the minor behaviors that aren't really disturbing the class or interfering with learning, it's best to use planned ignoring. um as long as it's not, these behaviors aren't hurting anybody, or aren't really inappropriate, we don't need to pay a lot of attention to them, such as wiggling and fidgeting with clothing or looking at the window. um Also, even if there's an activity at the table and a child needs to stand, that modification is really, it's not a deal breaker. To be able to stand a little and sit back down if they're still hovering over the table, I would ignore that. I wouldn't spend a lot of attention correcting. You could sit with them and say, hey, can I sit with you and we'll do this together? And if they need to, and they'll sit, then that's fine. But sometimes they need a lot of movement. They might help. And we want to also avoid nagging. So what is nagging? Saying the same corrective statement over and over. um, if you can relate to giving instruction to your children or your husband, put that in the hamper, pick up those clothes, and you're saying it over and over and over. Nobody's listening anymore. No one's doing it. Those clothes are right outside of that hamper on the floor, and you know it. So why are we keep saying it? Because they've learned to tune you out, right? There, so we don't want to like over give correction. They're just learned to not listen to you. When a child is having a tantrum or engaging in a disruptive behavior, this isn't the time to correct either. This is the time to connect and support through co-regulation. And what I mean by that is, like, how can we be a presence of calmness and help facilitate getting that child to a calm place with you, right? We want to be that model of calmness. But of course, we also always want to first assess for safety, make sure that other children aren't going to get hurt or the child isn't going to hurt themselves. What, did I click something? Yeah. Okay. So finding connection through a challenging behavior. We can provide a validating statement. I see that this is hard. Do you want my help? It could also help them label their feelings. Are you feeling mad? Are you feeling angry? And some of our learners don't know this yet. They don't know what that means. So we can utilize pictures, books, specialized dolls or materials, and point to them, especially some childs are delayed with language too. It's even harder for them to communicate what they're feeling. It's actually easier to just do something physical, right? Because sometimes it's easier to do that behavior than to think about it in that moment when your prefrontal cortex isn't online and you're just going to, they just respond behaviorally. So, part of that is helping them identify how they're feeling. We can offer calming breaks. Some of you have the calm corners. We are going to help build those up for you. That's a project in the making. Or also a calm table. Just pick a table in the classroom that when someone's having a challenge, they could sit there and they can do a puzzle or they can color, do an activity that's very simple. Not a favorite toy, you know, but something that's just calming and simple. And we'll put together some stuff for you in the calm corners. That's a project, like I said, that's coming, which we're excited to bring to you. Um, you know, books is another great one. You want to read a book together. If you and I know with staffing that could be hard at times, but if it's possible, maybe someone could sit with them for a minute or be in close proximity if needed. During transitions, that's often a difficult time for a lot of children. So we can offer our support. Would you like to walk with me to the next activity? I, Using timers, I like visual timers. Sand timers are my favorite, but I also like the timers that have like a visual color, rather than just like a timer that rings, like the visual component is key. And then giving a verbal prompt with that. Okay, 5 more minutes, and then we're going to clean this up. 2 more minutes, 1 more minute. Also, if transitions are an issue, I highly recommend using visual picture schedules. And that's going to be created with pictures from realistic activities within your classroom and school, playground, all of that. And if you need support with that, please reach out to me in this district, or if you're watching in another branch, reach out to your mental health specialist. And we will support you with getting that for your classroom. But I highly recommend that because it really helps children see the predictability of the day. It also really supports children who struggle with control or who struggle with attachment from missing a caregiver. So it helps them see the sequence of events of when that caregiver will come again. And you can review these photos in the picture schedule throughout the day. What I like to do and I recommend is after that activity has happened, you take it away. And so only the activities that are left for the day are there. And then you start again the next day. Providing connection during center time. This is so important because we have such a busy day and we have a lot to do. Um, but we can provide, this is such an ample time to connect. So during centers, one teacher should be, sometimes I do realize that we need to monitor a certain play area, like a sand table or something, where it can get like a little messy, or you want someone over there. But you should have at least one teacher who's able to float to the centers to really provide an opportunity for connection. This is a great time to praise appropriate play, facilitate peer interaction, and provide modeling of play as needed. Um, I don't know if you've ever heard of the love languages. A lot, it's about relationships and how you relate and what makes you feel loved, and it's different for everybody. But I like to say that play is a child's love language. And when you play with them, it's like the perfect way to establish a connection, which will have lasting impacts. So again, with avoiding that overcorrection piece, we don't want to provide a lot of correction statements during play, right? It's such a great time to connect. But we might see a child inappropriately playing. So what should we do? Well, I I say that, the best thing to do is to connect with them in that moment. So we don't want to remove the child out of the play center. So if they, knock down all the structure, or they were a little rough with their play, you don't want to take them out of that. You want to put yourself in. You want to put yourself in and support them and facilitate how the play should look like. That provides connection and teaches how to play. Of course, we always want to assess safety. So if a child's in the middle of a tantrum and being destructive and throwing things at people, then that's a different story, right? Um, but if it's just, some like rough play, we can come in and play and facilitate that. Um, and it's just remembering that every child that's struggling, this is an opportunity for teaching. Okay, Jennifer, we're gonna do some role playing.
Yes, I'm going to put you guys into breakout rooms. Probably we'll have about 3 or 4 participants per room. We're going to give about 5 minutes or so, 4 or 5 minutes for you to talk about the scenario that's here. And then we'll have a prompt for you to come back to the room when that time's up. So this particular setting, we're going to try to do a few of these, but this setting is story time. So you're in the room, your class is together, and there's a child there that's fidgeting with his shoes. He's super focused on his shoes, him or her. And the question is really, what do you do about that, right? You're reading a story to the other children and he's sitting there. So in the breakout rooms, discuss how you would manage this situation. And if you can, share with the group if you've experienced anything similar, what worked, what were some challenges, kind of engage in like some past experiences. So it can also be part of the discussion. And then when we come back, we hope that you guys will share with us and we'll, talk about some of the things that you discussed during your breakout room. Any questions on that?
Okay, welcome back. I wanted to see if anyone wanted to share anything that came up in their breakout rooms. Now, of course, you could role play it in front of the group, but you don't have to do that. You can just talk about it. You could just talk about, since you already did the role playing, you can talk about what came up, anything you want to share, what works, what doesn't work. Anyone? You can unmute yourself.
So we kind of discussed that it was different for the different age groups. Like I have, twos going to 3, and a lot of times I just try to ignore it. If it's not a problem for any of the other kids, just kind of let it go, that kind of thing, especially like during a story time or something like that. If it's not disturbing anyone, we'll just let it go. People said with the older kids, they asked them to put them back on. It could be a safety issue if something were to happen, a fire drill, we have to go outside. Please leave your shoes on, that kind of thing. Help them if they need help putting them back on, that kind of thing. So we just tried to talk
That's
about like age group stuff.
the fire drill with the shoes. That's a really good point, right? Yeah, so there's with something like that, we want to, if they're fidgeting and the shoes are still on or they're untied them, can we ignore that? But if their shoes are off, and there's, with the fire regulations, yeah, that's another issue, right? Good point. Um, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Did anyone else want to add for that one? Anyone? Okay, well, we have more. Okay, this is the second scenario. Do you want to share it, Jennifer?
Sure. So this time the setting is they're at playtime. A child is in a center with Legos and knocks down another child's structure. Same situation. What would you do? Discuss in the breakout rooms how you would manage it. And again, if you have something, a similar experience that worked or was a challenge, please share with the group. Okay, everyone's back, Colleen.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. So this scenario was knocking down the Lego structure. I'm sure we've all seen this, or the magnet tiles. Can anyone share some thoughts, what you've discussed, what works, what doesn't work?
In my classroom, I have infants, so normally we're building it together. So we try to take turns knocking it down.
Oh, fun. Yeah,
So this one's turn this time, but we're gonna build it together and then we can knock it down.
I love that. Yeah. I think there's nothing wrong with knocking it down. I think it's good with, like, say, like the 4-year-olds, like they love to knock it down. We all know. But getting them to say, hey, can we knock it down together? Like facilitating that conversation with them so that someone who's not ready for it to be knocked down, they have that conversation. So I like that. So yeah, it's nothing wrong with knocking it down, taking turns or having that conversation. Like, can we knock it down now? I like that. Good point. Infants, I love it. Love that room.
We also said for the older kids, to kind of just, if like the other kid's upset, to be like, hey, that this is how it made your friend feel. Do you see how they feel? Like, we wouldn't want to feel like that in the future if somebody did this to you. I kind of just, okay, let's work together and build it back up.
Yeah, so you're noticing that's a teachable moment, right? Even when they had a challenging behavior, you're noticing that that's a teachable moment that teaches empathy, for children. So wonderful. Even though something happened that got someone upset, it's like teaching that connection between children. I love that. Great job. Good job. I love it. Anyone else? Okay, we're gonna do one more. That's my little lady.
Okay, so this is the last scenario. It's the preschool classroom cleaning up from a preferred play activity. And unfortunately, there's a child having a tantrum. So while the class is cleaning up, so what do you do? Again, we'll break out into small groups, discuss how you'd handle the situation, share similar experiences. Any questions on that?
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Tantrums. Yes, and they could look different, depending on the child, right? We've seen all sorts of tantrums. Does anyone want to share, what they discussed in their group with tantrums?
We talked about triggers, like, if was the child warned that we were going to clean up, or did we just interrupt their play with like, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
No. So when you identify the trigger, it's, I don't know if easier is the right word, but like at least you know which route to go, where sometimes we're just like, okay, this child is crying and I don't know why. In this scenario, it seemed pretty clear that the trigger was they wanted to probably keep playing and we're trying to clean up. So kind of like going to like, hey, we were warned that we were going to clean up, or like, like this is what's happening now, like pointing at the routine, like what's happening next. And also pointing that, hey, but we have another free play time, or like, like in the afternoon, you get to do this again. So just bring it back to, you still will have a chance to do what you're doing. But unfortunately, right now, we got to move on.
I love that. I love that, Mars. So that really speaks to how effective using a visual picture schedule is for children who struggle with, denied access to preferred activities or ending preferred activities. We can say like, oh, there's free play here and it's coming again later. So I love how you talked about that and how it can be utilized in those picture schedules. I also love how Mar brought up what's called an antecedent behavior, which is what happens before the behavior typically usually occurs. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that in my next workshop at 10:30. But yes, we do. There are signs a lot of times, precursor behavior. And we can also see patterns of like antecedents, such as cleaning up the instruction that elicit a behavior, like a challenging behavior. Like we might see patterns of that. So two very good points. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Mar. Good points. Okay, so now that we got through our role playing, we're just going to talk a little bit and, just go down some co-regulation skills. So how can we connect during challenging behavior? Young children need our support to co-regulate, so we can validate their feelings, we can soothe them, and that's going to look different for everyone. You can sit next to them. We can, it's not necessary to bring them back to the activity that they were struggling with. So say that it was an activity they were struggling with, we don't need them to do it right? We can practice another day. Let's focus on what they can do right now. Okay, they can't do a puzzle right now, or they can't finish whatever they were doing, a worksheet, I don't know, or their letters, writing their name. They can't finish that right now. But what can they do? Oh, they can put their pencil away. Great job. Let's focus on, they could go sit down on the rug and crisscross applesauce. I love it. What can they do? We don't want to engage in a power struggle. This isn't about I'm the boss, you need to listen to me. This is like, I'm here to support you. Let's do this together. And also, when a child's in a tantrum, we want to allow that space and time for de-escalation. De-escalation is a process. It can look very different for different children. Some children don't want the space. They want us to stay with them. And some children do a little bit better with a little bit of distance. So maybe in a calm corner on a nice cushion, reading a book, and having staff like a little bit away. So set up that cozy corner or calm space or a table, whatever works for your classroom. And during co-regulation, remember just not to take things personally and model that feeling of calmness that we're trying to have the child match our behavior and our energy. So getting calm, how could we help support getting calm? Quiet activities, just refreshing this, drawing, coloring, looking at a book, doing a puzzle. If you have sensory bins, that could work as well, or Play-Doh. Grounding techniques. This can be used to re-engage our thinking brain and slow down the emotional centers. And really what that does is it activates the prefrontal cortex to help children make better choices. So mindful practices such as mindful breathing and mindful movement. I know that some of you do yoga with the children. That's great. Mindful breathing, taking some deep breaths. We also want to be really mindful of our body language, keeping everything neutral and calm. We can be firm, have boundaries, but just not showing judgment in our tone. So no, sarcasm. Pay attention to volume to not show that you're angry. Just keeping it even keel, appropriate to the environment. Watch your cadence. So when a child's really dysregulated, we don't want to talk really fast. We want to kind of slow it down a little bit to help them understand clearly. And again, allowing for that personal space if it's needed, not having our arms crossed because that's kind of like a threatening posture. Keeping palms open and up is a supportive stance. So just a review of some strategies throughout the day. We can use timers for ending preferred activities. I do prefer the visual for children this young with the verbal prompts, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. Review the daily schedule throughout the day with the visual pictures, definitely helps. And sometimes we have changes in routine, right? Like maybe a child's going home early, or something like that, or we're not having someone come today that typically comes, so just helps them know what their day is going to be like. Helping them label and name their feelings and validate them as they're happening, and making time to connect through play or whenever possible. One thing we're also going to be implementing is the Mind Up curriculum. So that's coming soon in the various branches. Everyone's going to be joining us with that. But in the Mind Up curriculum, there's something called mindful breathing. It's called the practice, and it's pairing deep breaths with sound. We'll definitely be doing this in the 3s and 4s, not so much 2s, but you know, so having that scheduled throughout the day, so maybe in the morning meeting, or maybe before you read your story, before they go for a nap, we'll talk more about like scheduling that into the day daily, but then it builds up this practice that they have to come to when they're feeling dysregulated. Other strategies we're using is reinforcing kindness through the core values of YMCA's of caring, honesty, respect, and responsibility, with recognizing kind acts. And we put an apple on their tree. I know, you know, the branches here all have that started. So excited to see. That's behavior shaping, right? We're help shaping that behavior and celebrating them with acts of kindness. So those are all strategies to help support our young children throughout the day. And that is everything. I'm going to open it up for questions. Just feel free to take yourself off mute if you have a question. Any questions? Okay. I don't think there's any questions, and that's great. I'm going to end the recording. Let's see. Stop screen share. Recording.